Today we're gonna be mixing colors for a challah bread sketch. So that's super exciting, one of my favorite things to paint, starting with the shadow. So the shadow is very dark and also very chromatic. That's not so easy to do on the palette, but I got used to it since I painted many of these breads. See this deep violet color? It's gonna work pretty well. So we're gonna call it that, put it aside. And we're gonna mix a few more variations, maybe 2 more variations for the shadow. They're both leaning towards red. They're a little bit less violet than the absolute darkest part of the shadow. This is still too light. Let's see if we can make 2 variations out of it. It's still not quite there. They're both a little too light. Notice how it's interesting that we're handling colors that are appearing too light, even though we haven't added white to any mixture yet. So again, I'm gonna stress this point that if you don't need to add white, especially to the shadows, then just don't add white. Let's see now. Are they too similar? They're too similar. I'm gonna make this one a little bit darker. And if I can make it darker and also boost the chroma, that'd be nice because let's see if this yellow helps. It's gonna make it a little lighter, this yellow, so I'm gonna have to counter it back with some alizarin. Yeah, it's not dark enough. Yeah, put some alizarin in there. Alizarin is really important for capturing those deep red saturated areas in the shadow. This looks good now for me. So yeah, these 3 colors should sort us out for all the shadows. Now let's try to mix that mid-tone. So the mid-tone is where everything goes more orange. It's a really interesting color relationship because the outside of the bread is basically red, right? But it's red that leans towards violet in the darkest dark and leans towards violet in the lightest light. And then in the middle, it leans towards yellow and orange. So yellow being my favorite color and violet being my second favorite color, this color relationship is something that I can just stare at for hours. So let's get that yellowy feel in there. That's looking pretty okay. And I haven't mentioned it yet, but you probably noticed that this is the first time I needed to add white. So in the shadows, of course, I try to avoid putting white if I don't need it because I want to keep them dark and translucent. But this mid-tone needs to start packing a punch. And when I put this mid-tone next to the other colors, you're gonna see the difference. Now yeah, that looks good. Now I'm going to actually mix a color that's from a different family of colors. I'm gonna mix the yellow that is appearing at the edges of each segment of the braid. You see those yellow lines? So I'm gonna need 2 variations on this color. This one, that's the darker one that leans more towards orange. And then we're gonna make a lighter version, which is more like a pure yellow that leans a little bit towards green. Now it looks pretty good. Now let's make the lighter version. This looks quite good, this yellow. Let me take a look. I have to put them next to each other to see the relationship. And yeah, I do think that works. So we're going to go back to mixing what we are still missing. This is not going to work. I'm going to put this aside because that piece of white is already contaminated with yellow, which is really not going to help us. So I'm going to clear out all this yellow because the color we're going to be mixing right now, we're going to start mixing the highlights for the bread itself. And these highlights are very violet. So if I have any kind of contamination of yellow, which is the complementary color of violet, it's going to reduce my chroma way too much. So I had to get rid of all the yellow so that I can achieve this beautiful violet color. Now, the risk is with mixing this color, the risk is making it too light because there's always a temptation to make it super light since it's a highlight, but we have to remember it's the highlight on the outside of the bread. And the highlights on the inside, the highlights on the light part are even lighter. So we got to make sure we didn't make it too light. Now we have to mix this bridge right here because that violet can't just come in direct contact with that orange without some bridge color. And we're going to put it right in between those 2 colors to see if the bridge we built works. I really like thinking about it as a bridge because you want your spectrum of colors to feel like it has a good flow to it. And it feels pretty good to me. So we're gonna move to the next family of colors. the inside of the bread. For the inside, we can mix this piece of white that I've contaminated with yellow before, because now the yellow is going to work for me. So notice I'm going to shoot for around 6 colors for the inside of the bread, which would be 3 different values: super light, medium light, and quite dark. But each one of these 3 values is going to have 2 variations in terms of its temperature. There's going to be a warm, orangey, yellowy version, which is the one I'm making right now. And then the one I'm going to make next to it is going to have a little bit of a blue feel to it. It's going to be a lot more neutral, a lot more cold. And it's this play between similar or identical values that have opposing temperatures, one warm and one cold, that's going to give the inside of the bread that glisteny, special feeling that I really, really enjoy painting. Now, this would be a good moment to thank all of you for watching these videos and for commenting on them. It makes me really happy to know that you're enjoying them. And to let you know that if you want to help me out in making more of these videos, you certainly can do that by going on the link in my bio and clicking Patreon. By pledging just $2, you could be watching hours of me painting, and in doing so, making a huge difference in my life during this difficult time when I had to cancel all my lessons. So any support from you really goes a very long way. And to everyone who's already decided to do that, you have my deepest, deepest gratitude. All right, let's go back to business here. So I'm going to rearrange the colors on my palette. Always important to do to keep your palette organized. I'm going to put these colors in 2 lines so that you can see how the values are similar, but how the temperatures are different. So we already have the 2 lighter ones. We have the medium value for the warmer colors, the orangey colors, and now we're going to make the more neutral middle value. So we're going to put some more blue in there. And it's looking good in terms of temperature, but right now it's still too dark. So we're going to need to add some more white to it to make sure that we're not causing a big change in value. We're just causing a change in temperature. There we go. So now you can really see how these 2 colors have an interesting interplay. You know, they're very similar in value, but one of them is neutral and the other one is orangey and warm. Now I'm going to mix the last 2 colors. So we need 2 dark areas for the inside of the bread. One's going to be warm and orangey, and the other one a little bit more neutral, a little bit more green. And what you're going to notice is these colors are dark in the context of these light colors. But if you are going to compare this color to the actual shadow, the core shadow that I mixed for the outside of the bread, it's definitely not as dark as that. So it's important not to make these colors too dark, in the same way that it was important not to make the highlights on the outside of the bread too light, right? Everything is contextual. So on the inside of the bread, everything's pretty light. So even the dark colors should not be too dark. So this became way too green. I'm going to have to help it relax. Still quite green. Gonna counter the green with its complementary color, red. If something is too green, you want to add the complementary color to reduce that chroma. And yeah, this is looking pretty good. It's just a little too dark. We're gonna make it lighter. Yeah, there we go. So now this is kind of working. I think I have all the colors that I need to sketch this challah. And yeah, let me know what you think. And thank you so much for watching.